Hi again, everybody. I'm John Beilfuss, the executive chef of the currently shuttered Lula's Louisiana Cookhouse here in the heart of beautiful Owasso, Michigan. I'm really excited about today's video. It's one I promised you a couple weeks ago and couldn't get the stuff, so now I've got the stuff and here we go. Just in time for the weekend, we're going to make Detroit style Coney Island sauce. I don't want to get into any big arguments, what's better, Flint or Detroit. They're both good. I'm from Pontiac, Michigan, halfway between. But I grew up on Detroit style Coney Island sauce, and that's where we're going to start today, and I sure hope you enjoy. When I was 17 years old, I was living with my sister. The two of us were living on Pontiac Lake in Pontiac, Michigan, and she met a guy by the name of Mike Settle, instantly fell in love, and he became our third roommate very, very quick. So in the 70s, there were many nights where we would be really, really hungry, like 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, starving. So Mike was a native Detroiter, and said, hey, let's go to Lafayette, Coney Island. I'm like, I've never been to Lafayette, Coney Island. So yeah, let's go. And we started going like twice a week. My record, by the way, is 7 loose hamburgers in one sitting. And I don't think I could do 2 of them today, but at that time, grown boy, 17 years old, I could do 7 loose hamburgers. And I didn't care for hot dogs as a kid. That came later. But anyways, Mike and I would go down to Lafayette, Coney Island, and he was such a fan and so excited. Mike would tell you it wasn't a good Coney if the grease from the hamburger, on a loose hamburger, didn't roll down the side of your face. And you know, usually it did. It did not disappoint. So here's everything you're going to need to make my delicious Detroit-style Coney Island sauce. I have 2 pounds of ground beef. This is an 80-20 ground chuck. I have 2 pounds of ground beef heart. I've never done it because beef heart is authentic in both Flint and Detroit Coney Island sauces. But I would bet if you substitute just 2 more pounds of ground hamburger, ground beef, you're not going to be in too bad a shape. I have 3 cups of flour. I have 1/3 of a cup of McCormick's chili powder. Now I believe that McCormick chili powder is very important to this recipe. I've tried all different brands, and the one I've settled on was the McCormick chili powder. I have 2 tablespoons of vinegar. I have 2 tablespoons of minced dried onion, 4 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of paprika, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. Make sure it's garlic powder, not garlic salt. 4 teaspoons of cumin, 1 teaspoon of allspice, and 1 teaspoon of black pepper. And we're going to need about 12 cups of beef broth. Our first step is browning the meat. We're going to put it all together in a big pot, and that's browning up nicely. You've got to make sure we break up all these little lumps. So while this is browning, I got to tell you the story of my sister meeting Mike Settle. So it's around Christmas time, and she's dating a guy named Mike that's not Mike Settle, and he brings over his best friend, Mike Settle. And by the way, Mike Settle turned out to be a hell of a table hockey player that night. I had a great time with him. But so they come over, my sister's totally enthralled with her boyfriend's best friend. So the next day, she drives to Birmingham and just keeps driving back and forth in front of his house until he comes out, and then she's like, oh, Mike Settle, I met you last night at my house. How coincidental that I'm driving by your house today. So they hook up. Mike instantly comes out, stays 4 or 5 days with us. For that last day, 5th day, his friend Mike calls my sister and says, you know, Judy, I'm going to come out and see you tonight. And she, oh, I'm sorry, I think I've got the flu. I'm really, really, really sick. And oh, I'm so sorry. You know, poor baby, just, you know, you get better. So an hour later, I'm standing in our dining room and somebody knocks on the front door. And Mike Settle goes to answer the door. And he opens the door, and I'm watching the whole thing just thinking, this is freaking awesome. You know, and he opens up the front door, and there stands the other Mike with 2 dozen roses. And they're just like, well, that's looking about where we need it. So the next step is we're going to pour this into a colander over a bowl and let it drain. So when this is drained, I'm going to need 1 cup of fat, and I'm going to need 2 2/3 cups of broth. Now I can already tell from this particular hamburger and beef heart, it's both drier and less fatty. So I'm going to add, you can add lard or just vegetable oil. I'm going to add some lard that I have to get that 1 cup of fat. There's a little bit of fat here. And then I'm going to use 2 2/3 cup of my beef stock. So you got to hear this. Okay. So 1975, my sister and Mike moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I decided that Christmas I'm going to fly out and see them. I've never been out west. Let's go see what this is like. I hope everybody's good. And what can I give Mike for a Christmas present? I know. I'm going to get him a 5-pound block of frozen Lafayette Coney Island sauce. So I drive to Detroit, get the Coney Island sauce, and everything's awesome. We take off out of Detroit. Our flight is delayed. And we've got a layover in St. Louis. Get St. Louis. We've missed our next flight. And so, because of this incident, when I'm not in Michigan, I always say I'm from Detroit. Now, I was born in Pontiac, I live in Owasso, but if I'm not in this state, I'm a Detroiter. We're in line at TWA Airlines, and which I'm sure is much improved since, that time. So, a guy, 15 people in front of me, no, there's 250 people in line. The entire airplane is standing in line, very upset because we can't get to where we're going. So this guy jumps out of line and says, "Hey, TWA Airlines," only he calls it all one word, not TWA, and he puts an extra T at the end of it. Do you not understand that this is 250 people from Detroit? We got a suite. We got kind of luxury accommodation. We got transportation to and from the hotel and flight off the next day to Albuquerque. Get to Albuquerque, they've lost their luggage. I've got 5 pounds of frozen, probably now unfrozen, Lafayette Coney Island sauce in my luggage. 4 days. 4 days later, they bring to my sister Mike's house my luggage, and you can almost smell it before they open the door of the van that brought it. But, so anyways, it was a trip to remember, but never put a 5-pound block of Lafayette Coney Island sauce in your luggage. So there's our 1 cup of fat and 2 2/3 cup of beef stock. So our next step here is to make what I call peanut butter roux, and I've added our 1/2 cup of flour to the 1 cup of oil, or lard in this case, and we're going to take it to about the color of coffee and cream or peanut butter. I've got it over a high heat, Paul Prudhomme method of high heat and stir like hell. Keep stirring because you don't want to burn the bottom of this. It'll get real bitter. As long as you stir, you can use that high heat. So when we get about here, this is about the right color, we're going to turn off the burner. We're going to carefully, standing back, add, slowly, our 2 2/3 cup. Going to steam right up on you. Beef broth. You'll notice that's a lot like the color of Coney Island sauce. You stir that in good and just set it aside. So the next step here is we're going to take 8 cups of additional beef broth, and we're going to add to it 2.5 cups of flour, and we're just going to mix that all up together. Make sure you get all the lumps out. So now we've got our 3 elements ready to go. We've got our roux, we've got our beef broth flour mixture, and our meat is back in the pot. We're going to put all 3 of those together. So there's our meat, our stock, our flour, and our roux. We put that all together, and now we're going to add all of our spices. And our 2 tablespoons of vinegar. We're going to stir that up. We're going to heat this over medium heat until it starts to thicken. Turn it down to low and just cook it till it's about the right consistency. And we'll be almost there. So this looks about right. Now, one thing about this recipe is at this point of the game, you've got to be, you got to watch what you're doing and be creative. If it's too thick, add water. If it's too thin, cook it a little more. This to me is a little, this to me right now is a little thick, so I'm just going to add a little water. And then we're going to let it sit for about 20 minutes. And then we're going to taste it. And I don't think I've ever made this that I haven't had to adjust the seasonings at the end one way or the other. So I do have the original seasoning blend as close as I can get it. But like all cooking, it all happens in the last couple minutes when you season it properly. So let's talk about the hot dogs. So Lafayette, Coney Island, for years, used Winter's Sausage Company special blend for Lafayette. American has, I believe, always used the Dearborn Sausage Company Coney Island hot dog. A few years ago, I think 2011, Winters started selling the blend that was supposed to be a proprietary for Lafayette on the market under the brand, under the name L109, Winters Sausage L109. I don't know if you can still get them. I couldn't find them, but we're in the middle of a pandemic, so who knows. So today I'm going to use a Dearborn Sausage natural casing hot dog, which is as close as you can get, and it's going to work just fine. So I've let this sit for about 25 minutes now, and it's just about right. Now, the most important thing on this recipe is that you'll never make it that you don't have to do a seasoning adjustment at the end. From what I can taste, this is going to need a little salt and just a little more cumin on this batch, and I think it'll be perfect. So let's put together a couple conies. So first of all, we're going to grill the hot dog, and the next most important thing is a steamed soft bun. Steam them in a little Chinese steamer I have here. And then the onions. American Coney Island uses a sweet onion, a Vidalia, and Lafayette Coney Island uses a Spanish onion. I've got Vidalia onions, I like sweet onions, and that's what we're going to put on ours today. First thing we're going to do is grill these, get them a nice brown mark on both sides. You could boil them. It would make me angry, but you could boil them. We're going to lightly steam the buns. Now you could do this, I'm using a Chinese steamer here, and I'm just going to put them in here for about 30 seconds. You don't want to turn them to mush, but you just want them steamed nicely. You could also do this by opening up the bun, putting it on top of the hot dogs, and squirting a little water on your griddle, and steam them that way. And there we go, 2 on 1. If you've never gone to Lafayette, Coney Island, stop down there. There's a guy in the front window. I hope he's still there. His name is Ali. And it's amazing how quickly he can put these together, get the mustard and the onions just right. Well, there you go. That's a great recipe, and I sure hope you enjoy it. Freezes really well. Today's batch, it was actually a double batch of what I used to make at home. So thanks everybody for watching another exciting episode of Scratch Cooking with John. I'm having a good time doing it, and I hope you're enjoying the recipes. This is one recipe that was very special to me. So let's have some conies this weekend, and be safe. Wear your masks. Oh, didn't want to talk about politics. Wear your mask. So I'm going to tell you, if anybody gets online bickering about what's better, Flint or Detroit, I don't care. I'm going to pull this car over, and I'm going to make all of you kids get out of the car and walk all the way home yourself, okay? I don't want to get into any big arguments about what's better, Flint or Coney